Pod Candy!
A podcast about cults, crimes, and killers. Beneath the surface of smiling families, carefully curated modesty, and scripted joy, there can be something much darker. In today's episode, we're unpacking Shiny Happy People, the docuseries that examines the Duggar family and their connection to a controversial and deeply damaging belief system, the Institute in Basic Life Principles, or IBLP.
Founded by Bill Gothard, IBLP preached strict authority, submission, and silence, especially for women and children. But behind its moral messaging was a framework of control, fear, and in many cases, abuse.
We'll explore the roots of the organization, how its teachings infiltrated homes and churches across the country, and the long-term impact on those who grew up in its grasp.
This isn't just a story about one family. It's a story about power, indoctrination, and the voices that are finally breaking through the silence.
Please note, this episode includes discussion of child abuse, sexual abuse, and other sensitive topics. Listener discretion is advised.
Outside my window, it's only raining. When the wind blows, I feel pain. I don't need no doctor, baby, I'm not sick. My body's been locked up, heartbroken ever since.
Stacey, you are...
I'm the expert.
You're the expert. You've done a lot of research on these people. I am just
2 years.
I'm an enthusiast, as I like to say. Like, I like following these, all these documentaries and these people. But Stacey, all I got from watching these 4 episodes was like complete anger. Like, I'm angry at these people. And I'm angry that people follow this. I'm like furious of how they treat women and kids, and that these people are now impacting our political landscape. So give me your expertise on this.
Okay, so I developed an interest in cults in general when I started listening to Digging Up the Duggars, which is a podcast on Apple Podcasts with these 2 fantastic people. And I was listening to, I didn't know. I watched 19 Kids and Counting, 18 Kids and Counting, 17 Kids and Counting, 14, whatever it was. I watched all of them. And I was kind of obsessed, I was sort of voyeuristically obsessed with watching how this family works. And there's a part of you that like looks at it and goes, gosh, they're so organized. Their kids are so good, blah, 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 and they're doing all these fun things. I mean, yes, they believe in creationism. Yes, they don't have, they're not secular at all. Yes, they're a little strange. But I watched it, and then I started listening to this podcast, Digging Up the Duggars, and started doing deep dives into IBLP, which is the Bill Gothard's Institute in Basic Life Principles, which is something he created and made up out of his head. He claims to use the Bible, nothing in it feels biblical or Jesus-like. Everything is about control, manipulation, isolation, and just like we were talking about with the Orthodox Judaism, this is very similar, where hypocrisy is at the top of it. They don't even see, they're doing this for the Lord. They don't watch TV, but they will do their TV show because it's for the greater good of the Lord.
The Duggars were definitely used as a recruiting tool for IBLP.
God has opened up a lot of ministry opportunities for our family.
It's not a show. It's really not. It's our life. It really is.
Christian fundamentalism was largely underground. They had their own schools, their own entertainment, their own everything, really. They had no reason to interact with secular culture. And then the Duggars came around and it suddenly was mainstream.
When there is sexual abuse in these kinds of situations, it's because there is no, just like Orthodox, there is no education around sex, how to have sex, what it means. Women are, in this purity culture, they're told to cover things so that your eyes go to the countenance. It's about the countenance. So if a man or somebody looks at a woman, it's her fault for not being modest and covering up.
We're going to be talking about clothing. Why is this such an area of contention? The problem is that men have a problem with their eyes. The solution is to avoid eye traps. The shorter the skirt, the more vicious the trap.
It's her fault if she's raped because she should have screamed out, "I'm Lord, help me, save me." If you don't scream to the Lord to help you be saved during a rape, it is your fault.
Wisdom Book 36 teaches the law of crying out, which is that if a woman is sexually assaulted and she doesn't cry out to God for help while it's happening, she's equally to blame.
It is your fault because a man loses control. Similar to last week when we were talking about, the men, if they have a hard on all the time because they're walking around looking at girls. If you have no experience with women or men or people in general in a sexual way and have no history, no education, you're going to wonder and be curious. And then usually that goes into abuse.
In one of the morning wisdom searches, they had us go around in this circle and talk about if we had been attacked or molested or raped and what we did to deserve that attack.
Sexual abuse, physical abuse, child abuse, everything you can think of under the sun. And it is mind-blowing how hypocritical this work is that they're doing.
They believed in physical punishment for nearly everything. It was a fear-based tactic and it was very effective. In my family, my mom was my primary abuser. She would scream at us, she would threaten us, she would beat us mercilessly. At one point, she beat me for an entire hour in a church bathroom in an effort to break my will, as she said.
I want to just make sure that everybody knows. So this documentary did focus on the Duggars and especially their oldest son, Josh
Yes.
Duggar, who a lot of people know. Josh molested his sisters and he also was convicted of child porn, but his parents knew about this for a very long time and covered it up.
Reality TV family in free fall.
A bombshell, May 19th, 2015.
Shocking accusations come to light that the eldest Duggar child sexually abused children.
After an anonymous letter to the Oprah Winfrey Show, Oprah's team called the child abuse hotline, and police started asking questions.
Stunning even by reality TV standards. The news came to light when In Touch magazine obtained a decade-old police report detailing Josh's alleged molestation.
It reveals that Josh, while 14 or 15 years old, forcibly touched at least 5 girls in 2002 and 2003.
Some are speculating the unnamed victims are some of Josh's sisters.
And therein lies the hypocrisy, but also, like Stacey, you were saying, with a lot of these cults, these religious cults, they don't talk about sex to their children. It's always taboo. You don't kiss until you are married. You don't have sex until you are married.
You don't do a frontal hug.
Right, no frontal, no bumping privates until you are married. No dry humping, ladies and gentlemen.
No.
But so I think that where we hear about all this abuse and all of the molestation that goes on to children, I fervently believe it is because of these laws and their kids when they marry. most of these people in these fundamentalist Christian organizations, and also like the Hasidic Jews that we talked about before, the Orthodox Jews, you get married to have sex, essentially. You are
to have children, to enjoy it, not to enjoy it.
No, you're courted at like, 16, 17 years old. And then these are your betrothed. So the only way you can have sex is in these fundamentalist groups is if you get married and you have sex to procreate. It's not necessarily about pleasure. However, the men get the pleasure. The women just lay there, spread their legs, and are like, I just want to have kids. That's what this fucked up group is all about, and it makes me furious.
I've had a little more time to process this IBLP stuff. There's so much, underlying, I've also spread my research out because I was so interested in the Duggars, and there's all these things that you have to do for your husband. If you notice, she talks in this higher register and she has to look up at him while he's talking. You must look up at the father. And then you talk to your kids like this. Now, the kids only are homeschooled in the IBLP, the Institute in Basic Life Principles, and then you are invited to Gothard's house to be one of the Gothard girls, which is a big honor. The Gothard girls, I think 36 of them came out against him that he raped them or that he touched them inappropriately. You're telling these people no sex, no this, no sex, no sex, no sex, and then you're abusing them. What goes on in that person? This is something we'll talk to Dr. John about, but you're abusing them. So you're hypocritical. You're becoming this cult leader so that you can abuse people and keep them controlled without asking questions. These women feel like they're being raped. They don't know what sex is. Can you imagine not knowing what it is? So I've been listening to another source, which we're going to talk about the Duggars. But because of my interest in the Duggars, I started listening to The Cult I Left Behind, which is a podcast. I found it on Spotify with Amanda, who was in the IBLP cult, had a very similar situation to the Duggar girls, Ginger and Jill. Actually, it might have been they're all J names.
I think it was Jessie.
Jessa and Jill. Jill is the one that's out of the cult now. Jessa is not. And Ginger is still in a similar cult called Calvinism, but she's not in the IBLP group anymore. But I listened to about 10 episodes when I was driving to Miami of Ohio about this woman, Amanda, and her upbringing, which was very similar. She grew up in Chicago, in the suburbs, and she was abused by her brother from when she was 5 years old. And he and her parents, they did, and similar to the Duggars, they did nothing. They just told him to apologize twice. They didn't help her. They didn't take her out. She's had so much trauma, this girl. She's had more trauma than anybody I've ever heard of. So you've got that. And then you've got Jill Duggar talking about how she doesn't want to talk about it because it's so hard to talk about. Can you imagine if your parents did not reprimand your child? And the person that Josh went to get treatment was another predator, another sexual predator, a friend. It's so unchristian. It's so unchristian that it's almost anti-Christian. This is not what Jesus taught. This is not what he wasn't into taking babies and putting them on the mat. And if they grab for something, slap them. You have to train it. It's called training, a blanket training, where you slap the kid and you beat them into submission because no age is if any kid is crying, nope, you got to get them disciplined. You got to get them listening.
I know that there was a particular style of child training called blanket training.
You put the kid on a blanket, probably 6-month-old, and you put something they want just outside of reach off the blanket. And when they go to reach for it, you hit them. And if they continue to reach for it, you hit them again. The idea is you're breaking the rebellious spirit they are born with.
So blanket training was also covered in Michelle Duggar's book.
I would focus on blanket training, calling out, "Okay, boys, it's blanket time. Oh, isn't this fun? Come pick a toy so we can have blanket time. We're gonna practice obey mama. Sit really still and look at me with big old smile. I wanna see that smile now. No wiggles, be still."
There's so many topics. I know you are so passionate about this. There's so many. I almost feel like we could do like 12 episodes about this, but
I'd like to do more, actually.
Yeah, I think it's I think like you had mentioned too, about this made up group, the IBLP with Bill Gothard, just like a Scientology where, L. Ron Hubbard is Xenu and we're creating this. Like, these are people not from necessarily religious backgrounds. And I have to say, Bill Gothard, who is still alive, who lives in Illinois, where we are both from, in Hinsdale. No, I think
Hinsdale.
Hinsdale. Never been married.
Never been married.
Interesting that the cult leader who makes all the rules for all of his followers has never himself been married, nor, as I guess people are saying, has had children, but keeps coming up with all of these trainings, like you had mentioned, like with the blanket training and all these other like child labor trainings. He comes up with all of this as it's just basically word vomit from his brain of, oh, how can we like keep women and children down so that the men rules. It's just out of his crazy mind. And then, like you said too, all these women are now coming out saying that he has sexually and emotionally abused us. How many times have we heard this from cults? Especially
every time.
Religious cults. Over and over and over again. And when Dr. John comes out, I'm always fascinated by the survivor stories, because there were quite a few survivors that were interviewed for this, as well as Jill Duggar, one of the daughters of the Duggars.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always very curious to know how these people have the strength to endure this for their whole childhood and then come out on the other side and help spread the word for others not to join these types of groups.
I'm hoping that this is starting to die down a little bit, but I don't really know if it is. I'm listening to Amanda talking about, she's tried to get out of this cult and it took her forever, and her family doesn't talk to her, and they took the side of her brother, the one that abused her. And you see this also with the Duggars. They take the side. I mean, they don't take the side of the victim. They consider the brother a victim. And then I want to mention Michael and Debbie Pearl, the most dangerous people on the planet. They are the ones who wrote To Train Up a Child and Preparing to Be a Helpmeet. They are these auspices of No Greater Joy Ministries. They're pastors, missionaries, and evangelists for over 60 years. And they talk about homeschooling. They talk about beating. They talk about just everything that's disgusting about, and look at the guy. I mean, he's just, come on, shave your beard. Like, who are you? And they are like
the new David Letterman, like the Letterman with the beard.
Yeah, it's the evil Letterman. Sorry, David, we know you're not evil. But I mean, these people, Michael and Debbie with an I, Pearl, they're part of the problem because of these books and this training a child. And like we talked about in the first episode we ever did about Gwen Shamblin, about isolating kids and putting them in a room with a Bible and leaving them in a room for 3-4 days at Bill Gothard's mansion. And then his brother was also abusing people in the North Woods. He had a house. He just shipped them over there. No therapy, nothing could help them. Just move them over, move them around, try to change it, get somebody married. If Bill Gothard marries that girl, then the case is up,
Bill Gothard had actually been the subject of a sex scandal back in 1980. Steve Gothard, Bill's brother, was using his position of power in IBLP to sexually harass women and to coerce them into performing sex acts on him.
People are coming forward and saying that Steve has sexually abused and harassed multiple people in the office. And so what Bill did was take his brother, sends him out to a campus that has even less oversight than the main campus does, and then leaves Steve to basically do whatever he wants out there.
The North Woods Conference Center in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Tubing, kayaking, and hiking were just a few of the many activities they were able to enjoy.
There's a landing strip for the Learjet that they owned.
Girls who disobeyed Bill got sent to Steve in the Northwoods. At one point, Bill Gothard is caught with a young woman in a cabin, and so this kind of comes to a head, and Gothard and his brother are confronted by everyone who's working for them.
Bill keeps trying to find ways to keep Steve in the organization, and one of his solutions is, well, why don't we just have him marry one of the women? And when you try to get an understanding of what was going on in this culture and how were women viewed and how is sexuality viewed, that story is terrifying.
I guess the fear that I always have are that these people are infiltrating now politics and they are getting elected. Madison Cawthorn, was that his name? Who's now not even, I don't even think he's in politics anymore, but that is the goal of the the Duggars, the IBLP. That is the goal, to get people into politics to then basically have our country, everyone in our country, live like these people. We should always, look up to the man. The man is the one who has the say. The women are just meant to bear children. The children are treated like shit until they can marry, until they're old enough to get married.
The man is the ultimate authority. The father's the authority until you get married. The authority then switches to the husband. So until you get married, even if you're 20, you can still be beaten by your parents, physically beaten. And then you get beaten by
your husband. Yep.
So I think now is a good time. John has been in the green room for a while, probably eating all the donuts. So let's let him in. Hi, John.
Hi. Damn good donuts too,
Yeah, I'm sure. Homemade donuts.
If we had a sponsor, we could, mention the name of these delicious donuts, but
yeah, maybe we'll get a sponsor for donuts.
Spunky Dunkers. Hey, Spunky Dunkers in Palatine. Do you want to sponsor us?
I love Spunky
Dunkers.
Do right donuts, Spunky Dunkers. Try to say that 20 times in a row.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, John, shiny happy people.
Yeah.
They always have to smile. Tell us what you took away from the documentary that I've watched like 3 times now.
Yeah, it was shocking. A couple of things I want to say right off the bat. I didn't really follow the Duggars. I had no interest in the Duggars when this whole thing came out, the 19 Children show or whatever. And I think that's an important point, is that a person like myself doesn't get attracted to that kind of show or material. So we're really pandering to a group of people that, Stacey and, with all due respect, people that really get sucked up into the voyeurism of these people. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with it. It's entertainment, etc. And that's, both of you talked about the anger after watching this. And I have to say, I'm also angry at TLC. I'm angry at how can you have the moral compass that would exploit these people and use them and shape these episodes to convey a particular message. And they did it just for the ratings. I don't think these people were into it themselves, but I was very angered by TLC and how they manipulated the shows and put it on for a sensational effect. So that was my anger. Another takeaway was just the disingenuousness of the Duggars, and one little moment really encapsulated this for me. If you remember in the first episode, he's baptizing his own child. So this is important. He's baptizing his own child. And he goes, in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. It's like, are you really believing what you're doing, or is that just going through the motions? In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and it's like, really? And I just saw that as such an example of being disingenuous and not believing what you're doing.
Gothard turned every father into a cult leader and every home into an island.
My father was very attracted to the patriarchal teachings of IBLP. The control and protection that it would have afforded him was exceptionally valuable to him, especially as I would come to learn later that he was a predator. When I was 12, he was convicted for sexual assault against a minor. So it destroyed my idea of what a family was. And the support that my mother received through IBLP to stay with him, to continue to bring him back into our home, was deeply traumatic as well. This kind of stuff was swept under the rug. That's something that I experienced directly.
I had also, not to toot a horn, but I also never watched the Duggars. Like, I really honestly knew nothing about them until this documentary a couple of years ago. And then obviously, like Stacey, have watched it a couple times since. But I think you're spot on, Doctor. The fact that TLC made these people almost enviable. Like, I think that some of the survivors had mentioned that, they'd watched the Duggars and they saw their lives in this, but it was more tragic than, they're promoting this wonderful family. It was like, can't these people see that these children don't have emotion, that this is how I lived my life? So the survivors found it terrible that TLC gave them a platform, and it also made them become so much more popular and to have people want to be a part of the IBLP because it looked so great on TV. So what do you kind of think about all of that?
Well, when I watched the documentary, and to let the audience know, when I watched this for our Candy podcast, I write notes. I write down notes. I study the documentary. I'm just not watching it with a bowl of popcorn or a donut and a beer. So I'm studying the whole thing. And as maybe within the first 15 minutes, I wrote down a note, and I have it here in front of me right now: freak show. This TLC created a freak show. Now, we love freak shows. I was fascinated when I was a little kid. I don't know, maybe it's dating me, but we'd have carnivals around Chicago area, neighborhood carnivals, but they'd always have this kind of creepy freak show kind of house you went into. And we love freak shows, and TLC was playing on that. So I think that the freak show aspect of it is just very alluring, and still alluring to this day. I still am, fascinated by freak shows.
Well, what I'm thinking is that, they glorified this show. They talked about, the religion. They talked about IBLP a little bit, like, their homeschooling and stuff. They didn't go into detail about Bill Gothard, Mr. Gothard, who's their god. They didn't go into detail, but I think it's so interesting that only when Josh got arrested, then the show went off the air. And that only happened because Oprah got a call when they were there and found out. And it's like, what about all that leading up to it? There's these two cameramen that they talk about. I mean, weren't they seeing anything?
And I think Stacey, great point, but I think it goes even deeper. It was taken off the air because TLC was afraid of the blowback that they would get for having this, supporting this whole family. Well, my God, whatever executive was in charge of this for TLC in the first place should have saw this train wreck coming, that they were going to be called to task for promoting these freaky, creepy people. And I just want to stick in one really quick point. I am not in this field, but what obstetrician would advocate a woman having 19 children? When I was in med school, I think we heard, warnings about, 4 or 5 children and the toll that takes on a woman's body, let alone 19 children. But anyway, Dori.
My vagina is hurting just thinking about that. I have not had any children, so for me, 19 sounds like something extremely foreign to me. But so, hey, in my 50s, I'm going to get started on birthing 19 kids. But I think with the whole TLC thing, and we also need to mention Jill, who is one of the daughters and one of the main people that was interviewed for this and kind of going against her family. The kids had no rights. The kids had to do the show, right? They had to do the show all these years. And when Jill became closer to an adult, she didn't want to keep doing the shows. She was in a newer relationship. She didn't want to do a spin-off show once Josh got convicted of child pornography. She didn't want to continue. And they also made Jill and her sister, her parents, the parents, made them do an interview on Fox News about how their brother, it's not that big of a deal that he molested all those years.
The survivors of the abuse go on the Megyn Kelly show and are kind of forced to kind of relive the trauma and kind of downplay it.
In hindsight, I wouldn't have done the Megyn Kelly stuff. I felt like I was in a place again of bearing the burden and the weight of just even though you volunteer, it's like you feel obligated to help.
How old were you when Josh inappropriately touched you?
I was 12. I do want to speak up in his defense against people who are calling him a child molester or a pedophile or a rapist, some people are saying. I'm like, that is so overboard and a lie, really.
And in our case, it's very mild compared to what happens to some
I know
young
so many
women.
girls go through things that are way worse.
So for me, I'm sad because this is my older brother who I love a lot, and I had to make that choice to forgive him, It wasn't something that somebody forced, you need to do this, It's like, you have to make that decision for yourself.
John, how in God's name, and I say that fully knowing in God's name, do the parents not give a shit about their children?
Well, I want to shock you both. I deal with a lot of sexual abuse in my practice of people that have been victims of sexual abuse, molestation, rape when they were kids. And this is not uncommon. To this day, this week, I must have seen 2 or 3 people that have been sexually abused as kids. And here's the point. The point is, every time this has happened, it's typically a father or stepfather or, the male putting themselves upon the young girl. The mothers don't say anything. This is not uncommon. And if there's one message that I hope our podcast gets across to people, you have to speak up about these things. You have to speak up, because we see in this documentary and what we're talking about today, our dear audience, that when you don't speak up, it becomes so much more devastating and so much more damaging.
The other issue is, the statute of limitations runs out sometimes because these kids don't say anything till later, and then nothing can happen, which is what happened with Amanda. She did speak out and tell her parents. They didn't do anything. Then she spoke out again when her brother was, shoving things up her and she was bleeding. She comes downstairs. They said, well, we'll talk to him. But they never did anything. And then years go by and she finally went to the authorities. But the problem is that there's no proof. There's no, so you have to say something right away. You got to call the police, I guess. I don't know. What do you do?
Absolutely. You call the police. And again, it is so common that, the moms, the grandmas,
are they embarrassed? Are they ashamed because they chose
There's a lot
this
of things
person?
involved. It's multi-determined. There's the embarrassment. There's their own safety and security. The guy is going to come after them. That's a big fear. Their own security in terms of money. Oftentimes, the husband is the major breadwinner in the family, and the women are afraid of saying anything because what will they do? They'll become a single mom with damaged kids and no resources. So men hang this over the women, and they're afraid. They're afraid to say anything. But we have to get the message for women to speak up and speak out. You're going to be okay. There's plenty of resources out there, women's rights groups, shelters, etc. And I know it's going to be tough, but it's important. It's very important to speak up about this abuse.
I have one more question. I mean, this is getting back to the Duggars. They wanted to do this, it's so like, you're right about TLC. They're just like whoring stuff out. Like, now let's do Counting On, but we won't mention the abuse. We'll just have you and your sister do this thing. They didn't want to do it. Jim Bob, he didn't pay these kids. He just raked in the dough for Jesus, for the Lord. If you can use that for that, everything. That's all the excuses are that. But think about Jill when she had her baby and wanted to do it privately with her husband, and they made her bring cameras in that room. She said no. No doesn't mean no. I mean, that made me so upset for her. But she has no privacy, no autonomy. Like, she just and they're not even paying her. He made them sign another contract for the rest of their lives that they would be filmed on camera, and he wasn't paying them.
Yeah.
He was using them for slave labor, free labor.
I picked up on that throughout the thread, throughout all of the episodes, 4 episodes in this documentary. And the kids are always peppering their conversation. Well, it was for the show. It was for the show. Now, let's face it. Yes, they are under subjugation, but they also got a kick out of doing the show. I mean, you're a kid, you're on TV, you're kind of a pseudo celebrity, etc. But this goes back to what we've talked about in many of our episodes, this kind of brainwashing and control that happens. The kids, it was for the show. It was for the show.
So these, these documentaries come out on like IBLP, on other cults, but they're still thriving. And I understand that they don't, most of these don't allow their members to look on the internet or, do any of their own research, watch documentaries. But what about people who know about this, watch this, and then still join these types of organizations that are cults in the name of, I get it that they're trying to better themselves with the Lord, but how are they still so popular?
Let me address that. And the answer may be kind of simple. Maybe shall I say fundamentalist. And that's people are looking for answers. Stacey brought up these Pearl, I forget their name, Michael and Debbie Pearl, with these
Michael and Debbie.
Unbelievably torturous discipline towards kids, spanking and teaching how to spank your kid. But people are looking for answers with kids. Kids can be wild. Kids can get into trouble. Kids can be embarrassing. And we're all looking for ways in which to stop that. And, as crazy as it sounds, these extreme methods, they stop kids from acting out. You guys mentioned the whole blanket training, and the audience needs to know, this is what's shocking about this. The blanket training was you put your child on the blanket, and then just out of their reach, you put something they would really like, something they want, and you spank them and you slap their hand so that they can't grab what they want. And this comes from, these are infants. And the philosophy behind it was, we're training them that, to be able to take discipline and to
kill their instincts.
Yeah.
It just kills their instincts. That's the point.
Crazy.
They're starting at 6 months.
Yeah.
They do this at 6 months. And the mom, Michelle Duggar, is like, oh, look, kids, it's blanket training time. Like it's a fun thing to do. That's brainwashing to your children right from the get-go.
Yeah. And by
they
the
don't
way,
want your kid to think for themselves. You can't think for.
And by the way, you mentioned from months old. I think the audience needs to understand something. We threw out terms with Josh Duggar of his child abuse and child pornography. The type of pornography that Josh was into is probably the most vile, ugly, evil pornography on kids you can possibly imagine. Torturing children that are toddlers and babies, torturing them, as well as sexually abusing them, babies and toddlers. It's the most vile, sickest child pornography you can imagine. I just want to throw that in because Dori reminded that when she talked about how young these kids are that they're abusing.
The kind of pornography that he was, first he had the molestation, he went away. That didn't cancel the show. It was when he had where they found the child porn on his computer, and he goes, oh, "What's on there? Child porn?"
Yeah, and not only again we see the parents covering that up, we have TLC covering that up.
Yeah, everyone's covering it up, and as you said, the pornography was the most vile, horrific, abusive stuff, and yet Michelle and Jim Bob have never. They're so sociopathic, I guess. They just don't break character. Well, he's had a problem. He's had a problem, and we're dealing with it.
You can't, I don't want to, I'm not a Josh apologist at all. He's obviously very sick. But like you guys are saying, like we're all saying, I blame the parents. It is the parents, it is the whole system of this organization, of a lot of cults like that. Josh grew up thinking, well, this will be okay because everybody kept covering it up.
Absolutely.
So
It's what we call tacit permission. You know, you're really being enabled, and you get permission to do what you're doing. And that's another thing that we know, is that when that happens in families like this and organizations like this, it's an organizational dynamic. And it goes back to a question you both posed before I got on the show about, well, how does this leader, this Gothard guy, who espouses these values of, you know, chastity and et cetera, and yet privately he's raping people and touching people and abusing people. Why? We have a term in my field called sublimation, and what he was doing was sublimating his own twisted, evil desires and needs, and sort of like a cover-up of, how could I, nobody would come to me and accuse me of doing these vile, evil things, because my whole program is about good values and the Lord and things like that. So these people, in their own ignorance, think that that's going to cover up their evilness. And
do they know this consciously? I mean, like when somebody becomes a priest so that they can, and I'm not saying this is bad. I mean, maybe some people want to cover up their homosexuality or their, you know, sexuality or abuse of kids. But it's a similar thing where you're just hiding behind a lie.
Right. And some people know it, some people don't. I don't know. This Gothard is not the most brilliant individual. What's that phrase? You know, the brightest bulb in the box, or, you know, which is another thing that aggravates me about these groups. You look at this guy, he's a mealy mouth. He hardly moves his lips when he talks. He's got a haircut from the 1940s, you know, a helmet hair kind of a guy. Wears a suit to the beach.
Like, he actually wears his suit to the beach?
Yeah.
Like, I want to know, like, I want to go look up on the internet, because I want to see him in that 3-piece suit.
There was a few seconds in one of the episodes where they had some kind of luau or some kind of party. Everybody's in Hawaiian kind of get up, and he's in a suit. The same suit, by the way.
It's good for SPF. It's good for protection.
So.
But
Right.
Doesn't this all come down to the do as I say, not as I do?
Absolutely.
It's all hypocrisy. It's do as I say, but I'm going to do every single thing against what I say. And these people still follow fervently and believe these quote unquote leaders. Stacey showing a suited up photo of Bill Gothard, not at the beach, but he is suited up.
With his little kind of used car salesman smile that he's got on.
He's so gross. You know, even when he got fired, you know, his board got rid of him. They still kept the stupid books that he wrote. These stupid books that are outdated. And let's just talk about the umbrella of protection.
Every one of us has umbrellas of protection. If we get out from under that umbrella, we expose ourselves to the realm and the power of Satan's control.
Bill Gothard's main thrust was authority, authority, authority.
God creates an umbrella of authority over us. The kids obey the parents obey the pastor obeys Bill Gothard, and I guess Bill Gothard talks to God himself. You must always obey your chain of command, and that included wives obeying their husbands. If you're under your umbrella of authority, nothing bad can happen to you.
You need to be protected by your father, your husband, and then her husband speaks to God. But if you're not under the umbrella of protection, then a demon or the devil will get to you. You will get. So the umbrella of protection is basically another way of saying we're isolating you from the world, from the secular world, and making you compliant and submissive.
Yeah.
And he stepped down. 34 women accused him of sexual harassment and molestation, with some incidents allegedly occurring when the victims were minors. He was sued and it was dismissed. Statute of limitations had been exceeded. Again, with the statute of limitations, I'm so sick of that. It's like these people don't have the education to know to tell people because they think they're going to get in trouble because it's their fault. I mean, it all goes back.
Well, if you recall that one, I forget her name right now, but she was a blonde woman. She said, I'm sorry, the one with she colored her hair kind of pinkish. And when the documentaries are talking about the lawsuits that were flying towards the Duggars and Gothard, she said, I would really want to help, but I'm so afraid of how much money and power they have that I decided not to go into the lawsuit. And this is how they get people, is that they have, and I would say to anybody who feels that they're involved in something like this and they're powerless, we're not powerless. In fact, I love that quote from, his name was Chad Harris, who's on the documentary. I think it was the last quote in the last episode. He said, the whole result of all of this, what we learn is that the people really do have the power. And that gets to, what you both were bringing up about how does an individual have the courage and, the strength to stand up against all of this. And that's really what Chad was talking about, is that we do have the power. They don't have the power, and people need to understand that,
Remember when Javi said, she knew that this was weird shit, like when she was using that rag. She knew inherently. And this Amanda on this other one, even though she was brainwashed in this other cult one, she knew that there was something wrong. You have to have that nugget.
And I'm glad you set me up for this next comment, because also this same Chad Harris said, and I thought this was perfect of a statement. If that little voice in the back of your head says that this is wrong, or it's weird, or it's crazy, don't lose that. He said, it probably is, And I pumped my fist when I was watching the documentary, going, yeah, Chad, that's it. And that's the message to our audience. If this seems strange, something like this comes into your life, and it seems strange, a little mealy-mouthed guy with helmet hair is espousing some crazy shit, it's probably crazy shit.
I know we can do, again, multiple episodes on this. And I think we're gonna, because I did find out that there is going to be
a sequel.
The second season of Shiny Happy People is going to be premiering on Amazon Prime. And I, for one, would definitely like to maybe do another episode on this as we move forward. But because we could just go on and on about IBLP and the Duggars, for sure. I mean,
absolutely. Shiny Happy People, season 2, A Teenage Holy War is what it's called. I want to say, I know this is a little cheesy, but I want to thank, well, first of all, you guys, but I would like to thank the people that were on that Shiny Happy People podcast. One of my favorite YouTube creators, Jen, she had the pink hair. She was talking about cults and stuff. She's one of the people I follow. She and her husband are fabulous. His name's James and her name's Jen. They call her the Reverend Jen. She does shows about cults and all this stuff. And she was on that show. I want to say thank you to her, and thank you to all the people that introduced me to this. Thank you to Jill and all the people that are speaking up against the IBLP. And thank you to Amanda from the Cult I Left Behind, because she's really brave to come out and she speaks to people all over the country about this. And this is a very dangerous cult / religion, quote unquote, which it isn't. And it's very dangerous. And as I said, as we all said, if you try to get out of it and you tell people, they won't necessarily do anything. And if you don't do it immediately, the statute of limitations will run out, and then you don't have a leg to stand on. Sorry, I wanted to make that speech. It's just really this particular religion is just so, it's more hypocritical than most to me.
They're all
the same.
angry.
They're all, yeah. It's just sad.
We're pissed.
People's childhoods are
I want to
ruined,
emphasize the word evil. I've said it a couple of times. You know, to
Mm-hmm.
me, these people are just evil. They're the opposite of what, you know, that's espousing God and Christ and being close. No, they're closer to Satan, and if that person
Yes.
exists or that
Yes.
entity exists, than goodly or godly. They're evil. They're evil. They
Yes,
abuse
I do
people.
have to say, since I'm also a pale-skinned lady, great to know that the Gothard does wear that suit, because now it makes me, even though he's the most evil person in the world, I think it's more acceptable for me to be fully clothed when I go to the beach this summer, which I think it's kind of opened a door for me. It's kind of opened,
that sounds
opened a
great.
new window.
I think that's
I'm going to
chapter
Paris.
12 in his book, you know.
Chapter 12. No, I mean, you know, people are nude and topless on the Seine, aren't they? I'm going to go to the Seine in a full suit with
like
heels. Go through the sand. Yeah, there's, you know, again, a lot we can say about this particular cult, but I really enjoyed having this conversation with you guys.
Well, I want to say the real purpose behind what we're doing here is, it's hopefully entertaining and fun, but we hope to reach people with some messages about what do you do if you're confronted with this, or this touches your life in some way or another, or whether it's you or a relative. I hope people listen to what we're trying to say about this is what you need to do. And in this episode, speak up, especially about this sexual abuse and things that are so vile in life. We have to speak up. So thank you guys.
Yeah. Thanks so much for listening. Be sure to join us next time when we'll be diving into another cult or crime. Our theme music is written and performed by Midnight Current. Check out more of their work on SoundCloud. For more about us and to catch up on every episode of Pod Candy, head over to podcandypodcast.com. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.
Pod Candy!